Help me to thread that needle, though. How does one accept by not accepting, though?
By screaming about it, crying about it, yelling about it. And then when I did that for a while, then there was nothing to yell about anymore.
This is the practice of acceptance. I don't accept this is acceptance because it's just his truth.
It starts right here, deep in your heart. Start right here. Oh, that's where it starts. Right here. Well, look to your heart. It's always and only starting right here.
Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger bring over 90 years of clinical experience to this important podcast, and they offer you a guarantee. You will gain something of personal value from each episode. And now, what matters most.
It starts right here. Start right here.
Welcome, everybody, to Start Right Here. I'm Tom Rutledge, and I'm with Dr. Alan Berger. I didn't forget your name there when I hesitated. I was just.
I know you had one of those senior moments.
Well, no, I've got my ukulele here today. I'm thinking about learning to play the ukulele today, and we'll get to that later. But no, Dr. Alan Berger, and we have been doing this, and we've been talking. And this latest conversation, certainly, I mean, all conversations involve you, Patrick, but this one in particular has, in terms of because it kind of comes in and out of the stuff with the political scene these days. When we started talking last time about the topic, which was how do you handle it when you don't get your way, basically when things don't go your way, which is what, by the way, what I always what I've told women all of my career is this is what when you're dating somebody, you find somebody you're new to date, that's what you want to find out. You find out how they, everybody's charming but when they don't get their way, they're going to show you exactly who they are and believe them and move on if you need to. But it really does come down to how we respond when we don't get our way really tells us a lot about our character. And it's certainly one way that I have changed in my life tremendously.
Hey, that doesn't only go for women dating. I'll tell you, I share that with guys that date too, because it's also very evident. I'll tell you, when things, that is the test, isn't it? Right? I mean, it really is the test.
Yeah.
When a gal you're dating doesn't get her way, how does she deal with it? Does she make you wrong? Does she blame you? And same thing with if you're a gal dating a guy, what happens at that point? And also for us to look at ourselves in that, right? I mean, it's such,
remember that saying that was going around for a while? It's if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best.
I didn't hear that one.
I've never tried to get away with that. I don't think it'd go over too well.
If you can't handle me at my, well, look, but there's more truth in that.
Well,
than not, Patrick. You're right. I mean, I don't think you'd lead to it if you were dating a gal. I mean, and we'll say that, but it is the reality, right? I mean, it's so true. It is the reality.
Yeah. Well, I think the telling part there would be is if you're saying that on a first date.
Yeah, that's right. And if they keep dating you, then you. No, but look, maybe if we revise it and said, if you can't handle me at my worst, then I don't think we're going to be able to have much of a relationship, because I can't guarantee you that I'm not going to bring my worst in here at times.
Well, but that's true. But it's not just dating. When we talk about marriage, when we talk about long-term commitment, Alan, you and I both know it's like going, no, that really, there really is a lot of truth to what Patrick said. That was it's like, I don't know if it's about deserving, but it's certainly
right.
I had never thought about that turned around to women, and that makes sense, because it makes sense that people, like, I do believe that what I just said earlier, that when we don't, how we respond when we don't get our way, when things don't go our way, is very telling about, anybody can have a good day on a good day. It's like, let's find out what happens otherwise. But I think it's because I think this is just telling of me. I think it's because that in my drinking years and days, and I mean, I was just such a ridiculous son of a bitch. That I'm using myself as a role model in that.
That's right. Yeah,
situation.
You're warning them against the Tom Rutledges of the world.
I've never even gotten through to the part where I actually thought, oh, it could go both ways.
That's so true.
Well, that's
It really
good to
does.
hear.
And look, for all of us, I mean, look, if you want a measure of your emotional maturity, that's a really good area to start looking at.
Absolutely.
Because, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? That's the real indication of where you're at in terms of your growth.
Well, it's the and in fact, Rick, I was just writing some stuff for you actually, or with you earlier today about integrity, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about it's like, I like to have fun every day and have a nice time, and most days I can find joy or fun in something, but that isn't the measure of who we are. That's that all that tells you is that I have a good sense of humor, and I might be fun to hang out with. But it's like the measure is integrity. The measure is how congruent we live with our value system at the end of the day. And that's we've talked about that some here before. But I mean, I cannot emphasize enough for people who are anywhere similar to what my history has been, is what freedom coming to understand that has given me. It's like, because it's not about self-love. It's not about being happy. It's all these other things, and it's about being the best person I can be. And everything that I'm learning along with you and from you about emotional sobriety that's one of the reasons that the stuff I look back that I've been writing for years seems to fit into it so well. Because that's what it is about. It's about integrity.
Yeah.
And honesty.
Oh, I love that thought for the day that you shared. So let's just put it out there, what we're doing. So you, Vince, Tom, and I are writing a book called Emotional Sobriety One Day at a Time.
Yep.
And we're writing 365 different thoughts for today. And
you're popular.
I know.
Is it for Maddie?
Yeah, it's for Maddie. My little Maddie's getting her friend Ava's calling, and
I love that.
So if you could just start again with your book promotion, and then I'll just cut out the phone ring.
All right. So look, one of the exciting things that we're doing right now, Tom, is you and I and Vince Hyman. Vince, I was introduced to Vince through Hazleton when I wrote 12 Smart Things to Do When the Booze and Drugs Are Gone. And he's been with me through the 3 books since then, and actually 4 books since then. And he's a fantastic editor. And I just love the guy's energy. And so the 3 of us, what a team, the 3 Musketeers, right?
I know,
We're writing this book, Emotional Sobriety One Day at a Time. Thought for today: the measure of your integrity includes how you treat yourself. Emotional sobriety is much more about self-respect than self-love. Some personal growth therapists and teachers teach, even preach, that one of the most important things we can be doing in our lives is learning to love ourselves. First of all, for those of us who have spent many years, maybe a lifetime, hating ourselves, the idea that we can that we are now supposed to reverse course and begin to love ourselves can be an overwhelming, can be, what an order, I can't go through with it, right? It's that kind of a thing.
What?
I know. Consider that there may be something that is more important than self-love, something more important than a daily pursuit of happiness. That's something that is more important is self-respect. Speaking practically, even on a bad day, a day when you are far from your biggest fan, your integrity can remain fully intact. In emotional sobriety, that is the ultimate measure of ourselves at the end of the day and at the end of our lives. Who we are is not about what happens to us. It is about how we respond. Try this. Make 2 lists. 1, a list of a few negative, self-defeating, self-critical statements from your inner saboteurs. The second list is a list of true statements about you that reflect integrity. The two lists do not need to do battle with one another. Just hang on to your list and be aware of how you feel about both of the lists coexisting. Bonus suggestion: see if you can add to your second list over the next few days. So
that's good. I just wrote that. I appreciate you reading that back to me. That's
good. I read it when you sent it over earlier, and I just said, "My God, we can even bring that into into dealing with what do we do when things don't go the way we want them to, and how do we handle them?" And look, if your goal is at the end of dealing with that, if you're feeling good about yourself, then you've done it. Then you have accomplished the most important thing. You have met that disaster, that disappointment with integrity, and you walk away feeling good about yourself.
Well, and the irony to what the other stuff I wrote there and the other we talk about there is, and this doesn't happen. This is not a direct cause and effect thing, is what I found. But what I've discovered in that being my daily practice for many years now is, and imperfect though it is, I've been very dedicated to that. Is that what does that bring you? Happiness. It brings you contentment, happiness. It brings me the less to do the emotional sobriety part of that, less dependence. I'm not I don't have to have. It's exactly what we're talking about. Don't have certain outcomes in order to be okay. It's like, I get done what I needed to get done.
That's right. And see, that's such an important part. And I wanted to, as we approach this topic today, I wanted to start to talk about some of what I like to think about the big lies that are underneath our difficulty in handling these disappointments. And we talked about 4 of them in a meeting the other day, but the one I wanted to focus on here was just this idea that life isn't supposed to have disappointment in it.
Yeah.
That somehow, if we're going to be happy and live a good life, that somehow it's sterile. I mean, that it's sterilized from any negative stuff, any negative feelings, any negative experiences, any pain, any disappointment.
Yeah, that's an aberration, and that we have to get it back on track. It's like it's off track if that's what's happening.
It's off track.
Yeah.
And then what happens when this stuff happens to us, instead of saying, look, my job is to figure out how to deal with this now. This is a given in life. Disappointments are going to happen. It's unfortunate, but life is what it is, right? Whenever I fight,
or maybe not even unfortunate. I mean, it's like it's our language. It's like we may not like it. I mean, we might say that.
That's the unfortunate part.
Right.
See, I don't call it unfair. See, I like the word unfortunate better than unfair, because unfair puts you like, oh my God, everything's against me. Unfortunate as well. Yeah, shit's gonna happen. And here it is. So now what am I going to do with it? It's like, I'd rather it not. Too bad, but it is what it is. So, it's kind of like back to the of course thing that you and I say.
Yeah.
Of course this is happening. It's going to happen in my life. Now, how do I show up? How do I cope with this? How do I meet that and still find a way to appreciate the experience? See, that becomes such an important, and sometimes it takes a while to appreciate that disappointment.
Yeah, it's like, and let's be, since we're also playing with words here a little bit too. The word appreciate is a little tricky there, because it is appreciate, but appreciate doesn't mean like, hey, I appreciate you, like thanks for the present, I appreciate that. It's appreciate. It has to do with acknowledging it, accepting it, understanding that it's part of the whole.
That's right.
Is the idea that what we do every day of our lives is we solve problems, and the idea that problems are seen as a negative thing, is like, you go like, well, not really. I mean, I give silly examples like if I'm at my office and I need to be home at the end of the day, I'm finished with clients. It's like, I got a problem. I'm not in the right place. So I got to solve that problem. What do? Well, it's the same process with any other problems. It's like, I understand totally unconsciously that I have to, in order to get to my car, I have to stand up from my chair. I have to go do these process. We go through all that stuff. We never think of that as problematic, but it's like we're solving problems. We're changing things that we need to change, and we're being dealt these hands. To mix our metaphors, the cards. We're being dealt these hands of cards all the time, and our job is to be good card players.
Yes.
There was an experience, the meeting that we had on Thursday, and there was a woman who was suffering.
Mm-hmm.
I think that and I struggle with this as well. It's the pain you're feeling, and then the steps you take for yourself to kind of come back from that pain or to work through it. And I think that it takes a while to acknowledge that there are actions you can take. When people criticize therapists, or some of the criticisms they make, it's they're just kind of validating. All they're doing is validating my opinion, or telling me what I want to hear. But my firsthand experience with Dr. Berger is he'll always present you with, these are some actions you can take. Emotional sobriety is about the work, right? That takes place after the feeling.
Patrick, I just want to interrupt you. That was great. What you just said, when you said the work starts after the feeling occurs, that's so true, because there's that point. I love it. One time, Tom, you called it the recovery decision.
Yeah.
It's almost like we could call it the emotional sobriety decision now.
Mm-hmm.
Is at that point, do you find a way to not be victimized by the experience, or do you just cave into the experience?
Right.
Do you implode with it? And when you implode with it, not only is it's almost like you turn against yourself. Now it's two against nobody.
What happens is you turn. We say you turn against yourself, and we want somebody not to be against themselves. But what they feel is they feel like others are against them.
Yeah,
and it's like everybody's against me, and it's like and I just think one of the hardest things. I've got a couple of clients right now, is a couple and then another individual client where it's like I'm struggling with some of this because it's just it's always a growing edge for me. It's like I wonder if I'm doing as good enough job at helping people understand that if you're just that point that I absolutely believe in, which is that if you're going to change. I mean, if you got a problem with this, or if you got a problem with it, regardless of what it is, the change has to be coming from you. That's what therapy is. That's what recovery is. It's not to say other people don't have a part of it. I mean, you could be a complete fucking asshole to me. It's like, but how I'm going to deal with that has to start, basically start and end with me.
Yes. I tell everybody this. It's an interesting little story, and it's not a traumatic thing, but it's an example of what to do in the face of somebody trying to humiliate you and put you down. Right. So I had an office right by the Torrance Airport on Sky Park Drive, it was called, and there was on the other side of the airport there were these little shopping mall, right, and open the stores, one of those strip malls kind of thing. So they opened up a Southwestern Indian art store, right, which had all these great statues and other stuff from the Native American Indians, First Nation people, like they call them up in Canada. I love that, First Nation. So they were going out of business, and I love that kind of art. So I went over there they were going to have an auction. I never participated in an auction before. This was probably 30 years ago. And I show up, there's about, 40 people there, and you got to give them your $100 cash, and then you get a number so that you can, hold it up when you're doing the auction and stuff. So, the auctioneer is starting off his thing, and he's going through all how we're going to do this and how it proceeds and stuff like that. And so then he puts his first sand painting up, which is amazing. They take sand and they lay it down and they put it in a frame and they paint. It's to me, it's beautiful art. I mean, beautiful art. And it's this little boy drumming, right? And I loved it. And so I want the thing. So let's say he opens a bid at $20. So he's going, all right, we're going to start the bid at $20. $20. Do it. Who's going to make the first bid? And I go ahead, $22.50. And he stops the place And he looks at me. He says, no, 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 no. There's no room for cheapskates here. You're going to bid in $5 increments or you're not going to bid at all. Well, as he's talking, I'm shrinking. I mean, I'm feeling so humiliated and so embarrassed that now, now he's called me out and I'm feeling so humiliated.
Well, you stopped an auctioneer from talking. How much power is
and
there?
Now he's going to use me as a case in point to make sure they're going to bid in $5 increment.
Oh my
And then
God.
I said to him as I was shrinking in my humiliation, right? I'm just shrinking, all of a sudden I caught myself and I says, wait a minute. When you said you don't want any cheapskates here, I think every one of us are in here looking for a good deal. Is there something really wrong with that?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, when I said that, I was restored to full size.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was able to not let him define me, and I made it okay that I was a cheapskate instead of him trying to shame me because I wanted a good deal. Everybody in there was looking for a good deal.
That's why you go to an auction.
That's why you go to an auction, as I pointed out to the guy. But at that moment when he says, oh, no cheapskates in it, I got so embarrassed and humiliated. Yeah. I mean, I swear. But that was that thing, is that somehow I caught myself and I said, wait a minute. Is it wrong that I want a good deal? No. Yeah. And I was able to come back and assert myself.
Oh, and you not only you were able to do that, you were able to do it before you were driving home. That's the kind of response you come up with on the way home from those things usually. Oh, I should have said this.
Yeah, I'm great at those. The witty comeback hours later.
That's usually what I would do too. But and then when I said that, everybody laughed. I mean, that's what
I was going to ask you. I was going to say you won everybody over when you said that.
Oh, it's totally. Totally. Yeah. I think I had a few pats on the back on the way out the door after the auction was over, because it totally changed the atmosphere. And I think he even appreciated that I just didn't cave in, because it created such a shaming atmosphere.
Right.
There's so much toxicity to it. But, where did that come from? I don't know. Maybe the years of work or something like that. That word came back to mind saying, is it really a terrible thing that I want a good deal? Come on now. Give me a break here.
That's great.
But that's an example.
Did you get the painting?
I did get it, and it's one of my favorite paintings. I
love
gotta
it.
tell you.
I love
for more than one reason now.
Oh,
not only because I love the painting, but because it has this meaning of that moment in my life where I just didn't cave in.
Well, I love those times where you surprise yourself. Even it's like that's the celebration. Talk about a happy moment. It's like it's like, oh, way to go, Tom. Way to go, Alan. It's like, well, you did good. It's like
No, and I did, and you're right. And had I walked out, first of all, if I might not have even thought it, I would have just resented the guy, right? And I would have come up with all kinds of diagnoses for him and stuff like that, because I'm resenting him, right? Piss off therapist, right? Because we can.
That's right. And he would have hurt so badly over that.
Well, I think I think there's sadness and there's hope in the knowledge that you need to show up for yourself, right? You can't expect others to always be kind to you or always consider your feelings. And there's a sting when you first acknowledge that, but there's something I can do to kind of restore what's broken here, right?
Very well.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think the other piece of that is actually it's kind of embedded in that a little bit. That it occurs to me though that when we think about other examples of where people feel shut down because they feel rejected or hurt, this kind of stuff, is in your story. What you did is you came back to full size and you reconnected to the group. Yeah. It's like, so you were not isolated.
That's right.
And all you were doing was representing yourself. It's like, a matter of fact, I'm going to write this down. It's like, because emotional sobriety, if you're doing a good job, we'll do a Jeff Foxworthy thing. If you're doing a good job representing yourself, then you might be emotionally sober.
That's right. There you go. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Listen to this quote from this is two authors that I just love, Dr. Irving and Miriam Polster. And listen to what they say. They go, if one person's freedom depends exclusively on another person allowing it, he or she loses his or her own sense of the power they must exercise in protecting and defining their own psychological space from natural incursions on it.
Wow, that's a complicated. Yeah, it's a complicated sentence.
It's a very complicated sentence, but there's a lot of wisdom in it. If one person's freedom depends exclusively on another person allowing it, meaning I'm dependent on what the other person's doing, on a kind auctioneer, on a thoughtful therapist, or whatever the situation may be,
right,
then we lose our own sense of the power we must exercise in protecting and defining our own psychological space from natural incursions on it.
Got it.
Meaning it's going to happen. I mean, people are going to step on your toes, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. And my job is what do I do when my toes get stepped on? I can object to it. Oh my God, you shouldn't step on my toes. Well, yeah, that does a lot of good. I mean, you know,
your toes have already been stepped on.
My toes have been stepped on. I got to deal with them. I mean,
well, I get the second part of that sentence, and I understand why it's complicated now, because the second part of the sentence is the more powerful part of that, which is it says if we're giving our power away to one person, you know, to I would even say like one person or one group or whatever to take that from us, then we are advocating our responsibility to practice self-representation and self-protection.
That's right. There you
go. Because they're talking about the response that we can't forget the responsibility that we each have, and that's one of the main messages that what I was talking about a little bit earlier too was the idea, the message of it's like. Is, you know, I always want people. I sometimes overly disclaim. I think some of my codependence is still there, and there the idea of this. I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm not trying to be mean about this. It's like, but the responsibility is yours.
Yes. How
you respond is up to you. And it's like, now, actually, I'm getting a little therapy here right now because I'm realizing I can probably let go of having to do those codependent disclaimers, because I realize that I've learned not to take that personally when people remind me that I need that it's my responsibility to take care of myself. So maybe I can encourage others to do the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I get that. I hear you.
Yeah.
So, you know, and this goes into how do I deal with when a disappointment happens in my life? It's the same thing. How do I find the ability to respond to it, to protect my integrity, to maintain myself? And the first thing is to let go of this idea that I need that situation to be different than it is to be okay. Now, one of the things that you talked about earlier, Tom, when you talked about this appreciation, see, I think we're all still very much into immediate gratification. So a lot of times I want to know the solution to this right now. Let me figure this out right at this moment. And I'm certain when I say this, you're going to say, I've experienced that. There's been experiences in my life that have taken sometimes a decade distance from to appreciate what that experience really meant.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, yeah. And for me personally, I would mediate with drugs and alcohol. You know, I mean, that would be my solution to, you know, mediating the experience. So this is valuable and, you know, all very recent that these processes are even taking place to deal with what is disappointing, what is painful, right?
That's right. That kind of soothes us, right, to drinking and stuff like that. It soothes the pain that we're having and stuff like that. But, you know, back to this thing about the appreciation of it, it's like when I get distance and I look back at that experience, I see a meaning in it that I couldn't see when I was close to it.
Well,
when I was-
distance, time, and what Patrick is saying
It's
for
work.
those of us who are addicts, sobriety.
That's
It's like
right.
that. I mean, no, I mean, basically, we're listening because when we're in our shit, we're looking at it through shit color glasses. It's like we're not going to be able to see any of that stuff. So that's
I
it.
know.
Yeah, but 10 years, insight is hindsight.
Yeah.
It's like our conscious mind overestimates its value all the time, I think, and thinks we're gonna create changes with insight. It's like that maybe that happens. I don't know, but it's like the best insights are the ones where we can tell us. If we want to tell us, we could all tell a story about what's going on with us right now in our lives, and then we could do a thing. We may do this experiment sometime. Then 6 months later, we'll mark the date and say, let's tell a story about what was going on in our lives. It'll be a different story.
Yes.
We're too close.
I've got one of those things that how it changed over time. So I went and did my doctorate up at UC Davis. It was a very psychoanalytic program. I mean, incredibly so. We were admitted. We weren't a department of psychology. We were a graduate group in clinical psychology that was housed in the Department of Psychiatry. So it was a unique program. There was only 3 other programs like it in the United States. And I wanted to go to that program because it was hands-on. You were working in the hospital, working in clinics. I mean, it was that kind of a program because we were frontline, right? We were part of the frontline staff. So part of the requirement, which they don't have in many programs anymore, is we had to be in therapy while we were in the program. And you know that, and I know that, Tom. They've dropped that requirement in a lot of programs, which to me is quite unfortunate because it was invaluable. Now, I ended up being in therapy with a fellow by the name of Dr. John Batista. Brilliant psychiatrist. I mean, he's so talented. He took over Scott Peck's practice, the guy that wrote the book, The Road Less Traveled. He got the offer. He moved back to Connecticut. He's now running that practice. Scott Peck passed away, and he picked up the work. But
no pressure.
I know, no pressure. Right? But that's how talented John is. When Dr. Peck met him, I mean, he is so sharp. Well, the kind of therapy did was existential analysis. So I was never in therapy where you laid on a couch before. So I would come into therapy. I'd lay on the couch. He'd sit over here behind me, and we'd talk about things, or I'd talk and he'd listen and reflect. Existential analysis was more active and humanistic than traditional classical psychoanalysis. So I remember one day I was talking about my father, and I was just telling him about, how I looked up to him and what a great man he was. And I'm just going on and on about his wonderful attributes. And then he said one line, he goes, "You really idealize your father." And I had this reaction. It's like, fuck you. I mean, I got defensive. Of course I do. He's a great man. Are you? Because it was in my mind, he was implying that I was doing something wrong because I idealized him. Now, I didn't share that with him. Of course not, right? Right. But now when I look back, God, that would have been a great thing to talk over. So that happened. So go 4 years later. I'm on a plane flying to Hawaii, and I'm going to be a keynote speaker at a Men in Recovery conference. And I'm reading this book called Knights, Knights, Knights Without Armor by Dr. Aaron Kipnis. Great book, by the way. Recommend it to anyone. Knights Without Armor. So I'm going over there, and he's talking about the hero's journey for men. He's pulling up some of the work of God, I'm blocking his name right now. The guy who talks about myths. Joseph Campbell.
Joseph Campbell, yeah.
Right. And then he was talking about how when men go on this journey, that they have this idea that they have to deny certain parts of themselves and now emphasize other parts of themselves that fit with their idea of this knight that they have to be. And then he talked about that most men suffer in silence. They won't share it. And then it hit me what Dr. Batista said. I idealized my father, but when my dad died of cancer, he never talked. I idealized the fact that he suffered in silence. What a tough guy he was. And then at that moment, I realized all of the things that his suffering in silence prevented me and the rest of my family from experiencing with him. He never talked about the pain of leaving and dying when he was 39 years old, saying goodbye, what it meant for him to be a father and having cancer. I mean, all of these things that would have been such, now when I look back, such an important part of my experience in saying goodbye to him never happened.
Yeah.
And at that one moment, I realized what he was telling me, and I could appreciate that experience I had with him. And it went together like that.
It's like, yeah, you read it. It's like it's a machine of some kind, and you find a piece that you never had before, but when you get that in there, it runs.
Yes.
It's like you go, it just starts up and you go like, got it.
Right. And then I got it. Then I got that. He was caught in these stereotypes of what it meant to be a man. I mean, he was so trapped in these things. He was a great guy, but he was a great guy, and there was parts of him that weren't great. This wasn't a great part of him, but I could never see any of that before.
Well, but it also wasn't about Dr. Baptiste was not making a comment that was about great or not great or good or bad. He was making about his existential. He was making about something that is. It's like,
well, I was doing that. That's why I was idealizing him. And now I realized what that meant. And it was like that opened up so much. I mean, it was one of these things where God, it just cracked me open. I don't know how else to say it. It just cracked me open.
Were you able to not suffer in silence moving on from that?
Yes, it helped me understand some of the work I had been doing, is because when I looked back, I did just what my dad did. When he died, I didn't go tell anybody I was in pain. I tried to take care of it myself at 11 years old. Yeah, good luck with that, Alan, right? Yeah. I mean, but I could see I did the same thing with him, the same thing. And even in recovery, Patrick, that became a theme in my recovery, the difficulty of letting people see what was going on, starting to talk about what my pain was and stuff like that. And being able to, for me, a lot of it had to do with dealing with my grief and the sadness I had over losing my dad at that early an age and stuff like that. So you're right on. It really, really connected a lot of things for me. And I think it's been very beneficial to my recovery and given me some of that emotional sobriety.
Well, and let me just plug this to our theme too, as we're doing that, because talk about something that is, it's, yeah, I get it. Problematic, not unfortunate, feels horrible, but by making the choice to learn, and I say learn how to not suffer in silence, because if we learned it that way, we learned it that way. My dad never said anything. He has a story. I'll talk about his story one day, because it's a story of where shame. I'm just saying this out loud so you guys can remind me. Where shame skips a generation or something, or however it did. But anyway, where I picked up his shame directly. But the point I wanted to make though was that by not suffering in silence, by being open about our disappointments, about our injuries, our hurts and stuff like that, is what we're doing is we're allowing people to see us and know us. And it's like, and to me, that's the thing that has given me strength to take risk in life.
Yes.
This is a strange way of connecting with it, but it's what just popped up in my head. And you and I will be the same on this one, I think, Alan, too. So my favorite way to teach people when we're doing workshops is through demonstration, through role plays. It's like, I'd rather do it than just talk about it. And it's like, and so, whenever we have, therapists who will volunteer to role play their difficult client, we know a couple of things. They're going to pick a really difficult client, and they're going to be more difficult than that client would be, because what we're really playing is stump the therapist.
Right. That's
And they're going to try to get us. And it's like, and we and both of us do pretty well with that. But it's like, but I've had people on a few occasions say, well, like, it doesn't that scare you though? Because how embarrassing would it be that you get stumped? And I go like, I can tell you how embarrassing it is. It's not because it's a beautiful opportunity for me just to look at the group and say, in this situation, I would just be killing time till the end of the session because I would need to get some supervision. I don't know what to do here, and how validating is that to other therapists? Because it happens to all of us. It's like, and so the idea is the worst case scenario is me just admitting that I'm stumped. I mean, in life, it's like, I don't, there's no ego investment in know-it-allism anymore. And it's so much better this way.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And the other thing I was going to connect up to when I started to really embrace and deal with the pain over my father's death, which was a huge disappointment for me at 11 years old.
Yeah.
So at 19, I really opened up that wound. And what I found in terms of dealing with this, it wasn't rationalizing what had happened. Say, oh, well, everybody's going to die, so just accept it.
Mm-hmm.
I got to acceptance by screaming, I don't want to accept this. I got to acceptance by raging against the reality of it for God, that night that I opened this up, I worked for probably 3 or 4 hours on a mat. You remember when we usually actually did laying on a mat and stuff like that in a workshop?
Mm-hmm.
So this room we were in that I did, it was a weekend encounter group.
Mm-hmm.
The room had a padded floor. The whole floor was a mat. And I was just laying there at some point, screaming, kicking my feet.
Tantrum, man.
Doing a
full-on tantrum.
man,
Absolutely.
a tantrum on the floor,
Mm-hmm.
shouting, getting mad at God, getting mad at my mom, getting mad at my dad for dying. I mean, screaming this stuff. And after saying all of these outrageous things, acceptance happened.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't the spiritual bypass.
Yeah.
Just jumping to, well, of course everybody dies, so it's just something you got to accept. I got to the acceptance by not accepting it, by screaming about it, by
not only was it not a spiritual bypass, it also wasn't a personal, intrapersonal con job. You weren't just trying to talk yourself into. I've certainly done that before, where I want to look good, so and I know the right answer, so I'll just go ahead and skip to it. I don't necessarily know I'm doing it at the time. That's where hindsight will kick in and go like, I don't think that was real. Yeah. But in that case, what you did is, you literally, that there's nothing more organic than what you just described. And what you did is you cleared so much stuff out, whatever was next, which is one of the things you always talk about. What's next came, and it was, and it organically, naturally, it was acceptance.
Help me to thread that needle though. How does one accept by not accepting though?
By screaming about it, crying about it, yelling about it. And then when I did that for a while, then there was nothing to yell about anymore.
If we take it to our head, Patrick, what I would say is, if I'm a therapist, kind of analyzing that or describing that to somebody, is we're watching this man absolutely practice full acceptance. Because he's, the words don't matter. The fact is that nobody's arguing with him. Nobody's trying to resist what he's doing, and he's no longer resisting it either. This is the practice of acceptance. I don't accept this is acceptance, because it's just his truth.
Yeah. So next time, you're up against a disappointment, what I would say to you is you're a writer. So give yourself permission to rage against the situation that happened, and keep raging until there's no more rage. Keep objecting until there's no more objection. Typically what happened for me is, as I got past the anger, then the tears started flowing. And somehow I think the tears, now that Tom said what he said, that was the beginning of the biological acceptance of the reality. See, and the tears were a reflection of that I was moving in that direction, Patrick.
Mhm.
So when something's important and it doesn't happen, our natural response, if we don't get in the way, is just to cry about it and feel bad.
Mhm.
I really wanted this. God, it's just really disappointing. today.
Just the deep pain.
The
of-
deep
of
pain
that.
of it. But see, if you don't let yourself have it, and you have these rules that we talked about, then
Mhm.
when the disappointment happens, the first thing I do is object. It's not
Right,
supposed to be happening. Are you kidding me? This
Mhm.
isn't the way it's
Mhm.
supposed to be. Life is
Mhm.
supposed to be the way I think it's supposed to be. And so now
That's
I
right.
get into all of my
Mhm.
objection to it. And what have I done? I've missed moving into my pain over it because I don't want to feel my pain.
So
I'd rather feel my objection.
right. Well, and what you're saying, that given as an exercise to Patrick and to anyone else listening, is you let everybody speak. All the people there, you basically don't say you and you can talk. You can't, it's like you put it all down, you write it out, you talk it out, you scream it out, whatever it is. And now you've made me nostalgic about those days of therapy that way. So I want to ask you this question and see if we line up on this. There's the rage and the angry pain, all this other stuff. And then there's the tears and the sobbing. And then what comes next? You remember?
Totally.
Right after, no, before that, laughter.
Oh,
Think
yeah,
about
there
it.
was that. There was freedom. Well, what I experienced was a total freedom, which is where the laughter comes from, too.
You're probably right. That really became, that because I remember being surprised at how often that people would be going through the deepest pain, and they would go through that, and nobody was stopping it. We weren't doing the thing where we were distracting with humor, stuff like that. But once you got through it all, I think it was just joy.
Well, I was going to say what I felt at the end of that piece of work. So, I literally was either beating a pillow, yelling at a pillow, or throwing a tantrum on the floor for about 3.5 to 4 hours.
Right. Because
And
pillows
at the end
really
of-
pissed us off back in those days.
Oh, those pillows, they got a lot of resentment. I'm still looking for that pillow. No. So the last piece of work I did was, I think it was being angry with God, as I remember it. And I was throwing my tantrum with God. And then finally there was nothing else to say anymore. Nothing else, no more tears to cry. And he said, okay, open your eyes and look around the group.
Yeah.
And I remember when I opened my eyes, it was like there was a new world out here.
Yeah.
And in the freedom I felt, the purity was unbelievable. I mean, it was, my senses were so acute at that moment. And even my voice dropped, I think, a couple decibels down. I mean, my voice deepened because I really connected to myself for the first time in my life as an adult. I mean, it was, and I did feel a sense of joy. That's the word.
The other thing you're talking about too is that moment that's making me so nostalgic of it. That moment when you've been in that totally altered space that you've been doing the work, and they say, open your eyes and look around. And I mean, think about all the rooms we've been in there, and all the people that we've looked at, and it's like what's always there is just fucking pure love. And people just tuned into you. There's I don't care if it's a group of 8 or if it's a group of 50. It's like when you do that kind of work, everybody's right there with you. And I love that moment I love the moment as a therapist when you get to say that too. It's like, just open your eyes and just look. It's like, because it's so cool.
Yeah. Once this COVID thing stops, Tom, we got to do a retreat like that.
Oh yes. We need a padded room.
That's
I wanted to be sure I asked before we wrapped up. How's it going with the storm over there in Nashville, Tom?
Thanks for asking. It's as of today, we're 55 degrees. The snow has melted.
That's a balmy 55 degrees, yeah.
buddy. I have not been down my driveway yet. But my wife has been up and down from the barn, and she said earlier today it was still some really slick spots, but I'm pretty sure by now it's cleared. So we fared fine. We were already hunkered down with COVID and stuff, and we can't get up and down the driveway, so we park one car at the bottom so that we could get out if we need to. But otherwise, we just feed critters and ourselves. And the snow has been beautiful here, so I'll send you some pictures of me and Lucas out walking in the snow.
Well, and let's give a call out to our friend Carol, who's down in
Yes, she's in Dallas. Of course, I'm in Tennessee, so we didn't have the issues that Texas have had. But she said that she had a couple of days before she got in without power, where that she had to fare on her own before she got with some friends. But she said she was doing okay, and her arm is healing from that injury. And she said that during the crisis, she said the arm did incredibly well. She says there's a little, sort of like I think you get distracted from it, or just necessity kicks in or whatever. But she said that she said she's okay, and we'll be back Thursday.
Well, our hearts are with Carol and everyone in Texas that's going through this rough time.
Yeah, you have family down there, don't you, Patrick?
Yeah, I do.
How are they doing?
Just alternating crises, with plumbing and heating, power, and hoping there's some kind of national response I hear that's in the offing that I was happy to hear about on my iPhone. My iPhone buzzed at me, and I guess there's something happening.
Yeah. Where's your family in Texas?
Wimberley, which is fairly close to Austin and Kyle, and then in Houston. So
see those places, especially I grew up in Texas. There's Dallas and that kind of stuff. They're kind of like us in Nashville. They'll get the winter weather sometime. But I had a client in Austin that I was talking to a week before that, and it's like she was saying they were predicted to get down to zero, and I think they met the expectation. It's like they are used to that down there.
Yeah. When's the last time has Texas ever experienced an ice storm like that?
Not that part. I mean, there's sometimes I grew up in Plainview, Texas, which is up between Lubbock and Amarillo in the Panhandle. We did get some winter there at times, but Texas is a big state, so it's like, and I'm required as a Texan to point that out to you, by the way. It's a big state.
So big.
It's
so big.
So big. Yeah, I have to, and that's one of the things I miss because of the COVID thing is I'm way late for my Texas Ego recharge visit. You have to get back here. It's like, I'm having to conserve my Texas ego to be sure it lasts, because I got to get back and get back to my good old arrogant Texan self.
Do you go back there every now and again, Tom? You have family there?
Yeah. But I go back there anyway, and it's like and see, I have my old college friends that are there. But those are the folks I go back to see, and I actually have clients there that I've been doing workshops with them for a number of years, where I go every so often and go in there. That's one of the places I would love for us to go, because I have a following down there that would love to come to a workshop when we get free to travel again. I'd love for us to do that. Carol will help us with that for sure.
And I just want to make a shout out to one of our guests that we've had on here before, Robin, who came in with the dietitian and who wrote the Eating Disorder Trap. I've been reading that book, and I got to tell you,
it's great.
She did a phenomenal job on that, in terms of not just looking at it from the nutritional standpoint of these issues and challenges, but she integrates the psychology well. But the other thing she does, I think, superbly, is explode so many myths about food and nutrition. I mean, she's wonderful. It's the most commonsensical approach I've ever read.
Right.
I really recommend it to anybody.
Me too, absolutely. And she's one of the best nutritionists I know, are just amazing scientists, and she is one of those people. And to be an amazing scientist and able to write in such a way that's that clear and that easily absorbed, for those of us that, I'll speak for myself, but they're not scientists. No. It's like it's a wonderful talent.
It's a skill. It's a talent and a skill. It really is. All right, so we'll see everybody next week.
It's a spiral, not a circle. goes round, round, round. Look for solutions, be your own friend. Never say never in either direction. Look in the mirror, trust the reflection.